Hey everyone, good morning. It's Dennis from Data Science with Dennis. I hope you are well. Today is Saturday, May 11th, 2024, and it is a gorgeous day out. I live on the west coast of the United States, and we are having an absolutely beautiful day. I got up very early today. I went out for a nice long walk with my dog. We started in the dark and saw the sunrise, and really just enjoying a great start to the weekend. And another way that I start my weekend is by streaming this live show here with you. This is the Week in Data Science, where I take the time to review some of the stories that I put out during the week and talk a little bit about some of the latest happenings in data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence or generative AI. As you may know, I put out a daily data science minute where I highlight a story. Now, I like to keep those short because some platforms really only allow a minute long videos. So this show helps me kind of expand a little bit on those thoughts, expand a little, maybe some of the more details that I can give in a minute in some of the other videos that I do. So in addition to that, it also helps me to be able to get feedback from you. So I am streaming on both YouTube and X right now, and I will do my best to keep an eye on the comments feature so that I can also interact with you. The way I like to do the show is I like to cover the stories first, and then I'll go ahead and check the comments for any questions you might have. So feel free to ask questions on any of the stories. If you have questions on other topics, or maybe I missed a good story during the week, please let me know. Certainly happy to look at that and if I missed something that's good. But otherwise, I do try to make this an interactive show. So if you'd like to join or have anything you want to send my way, please do so in the comments or send me a message on X. So looking at my notes here, I have a couple of stories. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories I'd like to cover with you today. Because it's the 6 stories that I sent out to my Data Science Minute since the last time I did this show. So I'd like to go ahead and get started with some of those. Let me bring up my banners here so you can see which stories we're looking at. So the first story that I had sent out that I thought was a very well-written article was on Towards Data Science. And it was an article on 6 reasons why AI projects fail. Now, I think the author did a really excellent job of identifying some of those reasons why the projects fail. The one that caught my eye the most was item number 3 that the author highlighted around the results not being strong enough or accurate enough from most models. And that is certainly one of the problems that some modeling efforts can have. We kind of take it for granted that some companies or some teams are able to produce very accurate models, but that's not easy. Not all models are going to reach a very high level of accuracy. So I do agree that that is a problem. However, what I don't agree with is I don't agree with the author's recommendations that maybe we need to kind of dumb down the efforts that we use algorithms for. The author suggested, well, maybe you should just use them for repetitive, categorical type of tasks and things like that. And while there's certainly a case to be made for that, to me that almost sounds like giving up, like your team's giving up, like your whole enterprise is giving up, where you're just using your algorithms for those types of basic things. You'll certainly still benefit from covering some of those tasks, but I still think you can use algorithms for some of the larger tasks. What I really think that this speaks to, what I really would have liked the author to kind of explore a little bit more, is that a lot of the issues around accuracy or just overall model performance really comes down to the methodology that the team is following. So many teams are really lacking proper methodology out there. And that's really where I see the most benefit in terms of taking a middling performing model to a model that can, really generate some top results. I think that a lot of teams, both from the beginning and during their development process, kind of abandon the scientific method, and really that's what data science is. We're supposed to be applying the scientific method to data. That's essentially what data science is. We're supposed to be conducting experiments and trying different things and doing grid searches and really maintaining an open mind to what the answers could be within the model. Kind of removing that bias of what you think the answer is to actually finding what the answer is. So I think that I would have liked to have seen the article explore that a little bit more, because I think more teams in data science need to do that, where they need to say, okay, well, if we don't have a great model, then it's on us. It's on us because of our methodology. It's so easy to blame the stakeholders or blame the lack of data or this and that. But how many models did you actually test? How many hyperparameters did you test? Did you keep an open mind free of domain bias or other things, that can affect a model? Did you write fresh, brand new code, or did you just reuse a model that you're comfortable with? Data scientists tend to do that. We tend to zero in on some models that we're just comfortable with. That's not great. That's not a really good way to find a proper champion model, right? So that's where I would like to see most teams go when maybe one model or maybe a team has a poor history of model performance, where it's not the data, it's not the model, it's sometimes it's the methodology, the process that you're following to get to an answer. So I would have liked to have seen the article talk a little bit more about that. I'm a huge champion of methodology when it comes to data science team. That's usually the first thing I want to examine anytime I meet with a team or meet with executives or read a white paper. I'm always on the lookout for, well, what was the methodology they followed? Because I think those things are really important and really the root cause of a lot of these times where you say, well, we didn't have a lot of success with that, or we took a look at that last year and it didn't really pan out for us, so on and so forth. It's usually rooted somewhere within the methodology. So that's where I would have liked to have seen the answer goes. Like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with the conclusions that were drawn by the author, but I think that looking at some of the methodology is really key in a lot of instances for a lot of teams out there. Okay, so the next item that I would like to look at, another great article that was out this week, was around OpenAI facing a lawsuit from a conglomerate of 8 US newspapers. So, as you may know, there has been a lot of consolidation in the newspaper industry. So this particular case was brought forward by an investment firm that owns 8 different newspapers across the country. Various parts of the country, and they are claiming that their content was used within OpenAI to train the models, and obviously it was used without their consent, without proper attribution, without compensation. So the newspapers are bringing a lawsuit. Now, it's not the first time that OpenAI has faced a lawsuit like this. There are other publications out there that have brought lawsuits. But I think this one caught attention because it is quite a few number of newspapers. So obviously there's a lot of potential there for some sort of compensation or settlement or whatnot. I believe it's the largest single case that OpenAI has faced so far. All the previous ones have been individual publishers or individual newspapers. So this one, really reminded me of some of the work that I used to do earlier in my career. When I was kind of in my very, very early stages of my career, I actually did a lot of work in the video game industry. One of my first proper jobs was working for Disney Interactive when they still had their own video game studios. And from there, I went to work for the trade association for the video game industry. And I worked very closely with some of their anti-piracy efforts that were coming out of the trade association. So proper credit for content creators and copyright laws is kind of something that's kind of been ingrained in me and kind of near and dear to my heart. I've done a lot of really interesting work around that. Some of the work I actually can't talk about because it did involve a lot of federal law enforcement here in the U.S. But it's something that I think is really key. And I think it's going to be very difficult for OpenAI to kind of get away from these types of lawsuits, because some of these lawsuits are going to be fairly straightforward to prove. A lot of these newspapers certainly had local interest stories, or maybe you could search for like the reporter bios. You could almost certainly find data that would have only been available on these newspapers' websites. So that would kind of be a smoking gun, if you will, for saying that OpenAI was out there actively scraping their website. Or maybe there's server logs that show the OpenAI spider that's out there scraping their website, right? They could come up with server logs and say, yeah, OpenAI scraped our website on such and such a date and all that. So I think that those things are going to be fairly straightforward for these 8 newspapers to prove. It actually reminded me of a funny story that I was told that I didn't realize, and maybe some of you out there don't realize it too. But do you remember when we used to have like VHS tapes, or even I think even now at the beginning of video games, like when you load a video game into your PlayStation or whatever, or you load your movie, there's usually an FBI screen that pops up. There's an FBI screen with the logo, and it tells you about how, there's the FBI warning telling you about copyright violations, and I think it even says that each copyright violation is a $10,000 fine, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that was told to me when I was doing this work is that it's not that they're warning you about the copyright violation. It's that they're causing a copyright violation. Because what ends up happening is, how they have that logo? That logo is a trademark. Even though it's the FBI logo, that logo is a trademark. It's a copyrighted logo. So if you pirate something that has that logo, it gives the ability for the federal government to go after you, not for the game's copyright, but for their own copyright. So the gaming company will come after you on a civil charge, right? Because you violated their intellectual property. But the government can come after you because of the FBI logo. So a lot of people don't realize that logo there is for the copyright violation. It's not just a warning. It's so that they know that every piece of media out there can potentially be prosecuted by the FBI because you also violated the FBI's trademark and logo. So that's what this kind of reminded me of, where newspapers can kind of start doing that in some way, where they can start including their own newspaper name or their corporate name or whatever it might be, different things that say, well, here, this proves that you violated my copyright because you copied this, this, and this. So I wouldn't be surprised if some publishers came up with something similar to that, because we don't have like those FBI logos in books and things like that, even though books get pirated also. But it just reminded me of that, where most people don't realize that that's why that logo is in there, or why that warning is in there. It's to carry the logo, because it'd be weird if they just flashed the logo and nothing else, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if publishers start taking more of those proactive steps to be able to block those copyright violations and more quickly or more definitively prove that OpenAI has been scraping their data. And really, I don't want to just pick on OpenAI, because I don't think there's any generative AI companies that aren't doing scraping in some form. Somebody recently told me that they were applying for a position, and the position, it was at an AI company, and the position was listed as data acquisition, and they wanted expert Python skills for quote unquote data acquisition. So that's what the companies are calling it. But at the end of the day, it's scraping, and they're probably violating quite a few intellectual property rights along the way. So we'll see where this case ends up. Again, it's something that's near and dear to my heart, so I'll be tracking it closely. But we'll see what the end result is there. The next article I wanted to talk about is something that dovetails into a study that I will be releasing later this week. So the website studyfinds.org, which releases early results of surveys and white papers, conducted a survey, or rather they showed a survey where 1 in 4 Americans are currently in fear of losing their jobs. Now, in this particular survey, they were citing economic conditions as the reasons why they thought they were going to lose their job. And I think that it speaks to the pessimism that there is right now in the U.S. economy. So I definitely do not doubt the 25% number that is being found by this survey. Now, this survey overall caught my attention because I asked a similar question in my survey. So let me take a step back. Later this week, I'm going to be releasing the Public Attitude Towards Artificial Intelligence survey. It's a survey that I ran earlier this month where I asked people about their attitudes towards AI. And one of the questions I asked was around their fears of being replaced by AI in their jobs. In my survey, I asked, over what time frame do you think you are going to lose your job to AI? Do you think it's going to happen in a year, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or never be replaced? In my survey, 16% of respondents said that they would be replaced by AI within the next year. 16%. An additional 26% thought it would be within the next 2 to 3 years. So that is 42% of my survey respondents thought that they would be replaced by AI within the next 3 years. And again, a good amount of those people thought it'd be within the next year. So I think there's a lot of confluence there between these two results, where the survey finds result is putting it at 25%. I'm putting it at 16% over the next year, and then 42% within the next 3 years maximum. So a lot of confluence there, even though they are motivated by two different factors. One's from economic factors, one's from AI. In many ways, the economic factors are going to drive the AI because presumably the AI workers or the AI processes are going to be significantly cheaper than really any form of human labor out there. So I think that there's a lot of really strong implications out there for the job market as a whole in the US, with kind of a variety of drivers behind it. So the net result is going to be the same, but there's going to be multiple drivers that are causing it. And I think it'll be very interesting to see kind of which one of these surveys or which one of those factors ends up being the biggest driver. Is it economic? Is it going to be AI, or is it going to be other things? You could also say there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now with some of the geopolitical conflicts or whatnot. So lots of really interesting things coming up over the next year in the U.S. labor market, and I'll be watching it closely to see how some of those drivers end up, and kind of see where some of these surveys end up, and maybe even end up repeating some of these surveys. With my Public Attitudes Towards Artificial Intelligence survey, I'm going to be repeating that on a fairly regular basis because the tools are coming out so quickly. So my hypothesis is that the number of people that think AI will replace them is going to be growing and growing, because I think the tools are going to be coming out faster and faster. Probably faster than what most people give them credit for. So I'll be looking at that because I think that it's going to be something where tracking the trend is going to be just as valuable as running the survey itself. So we'll see where we end up, but obviously a lot of uncertainty in American minds out there for the labor market in the next year to 3 years. The fourth article that I had sent out this week was one from OpenAI. It was an interview rather, by OpenAI's leader, Sam Altman. Sam Altman is somebody who has obviously come to the forefront of tech figures, if you will, over the last year, because he's been very vocal about his representation of OpenAI. And one of the things that he mentioned in an interview that this article covers was that he doesn't think that the future of generative AI, at least in the short term, is going to involve some sort of appliance or some sort of thing in the home. Obviously, kind of intimating about some sort of android or robot in the home. He thinks that there's still a lot of things that generative AI is going to do apart from that are still going to benefit people's lives. And really, I was happy to see this article because I think that sometimes the speculation around humanoid robots is a little bit overblown. I think that there's a lot of videos out there that kind of have a really cool factor to them, and it's kind of interesting to see these robots. But I really think that the majority of those robots are very, very far off in the future. Very far off in the future, and really probably not as beneficial as we would think to have them in the home. Because a lot of the functions that you see these robots do during the demos aren't really something that are beneficial to humanity per se, right? What I'm looking for, and I'll be speaking to this later in some of my other videos, is I'm looking for robots that are going to have fine motor skills with their hands, with their fingers, with their wrists. Things along those lines are really going to move forward with AI and robotics. And I think that we're still much further away from that than most people would realize. So I completely agree with Altman that there's really no reason to get excited about robots or other machines coming into your home and helping you with AI. There's still many, many things behind the scenes that are going to help you. So it's going to be much more about the tools that you use on a daily basis. It's no mistake that we're getting a lot of co-pilots and a lot of virtual assistants in our software and things like that. And I think that's gonna be something that continues quite a bit, as far as all these new features and new developments that you're going to slowly see into the tools that you already use, and then that's your exposure to AI. I think that's going to happen for at least the next 1 to 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And not only are you going to see more of them, you're going to see the tools getting more accurate, because some of them are still lacking some accuracy and things like that. So you're going to see not just more tools, but you're going to see more refined tools that really improve. So speaking of refined tools and speaking of OpenAI, this coming Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific, OpenAI is going to be having a new product announcement that they're going to be streaming, kind of doing it in the same way that Apple does with their product launches. So they're going to be streaming that soon. Again, this coming Monday, that would be May 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific. So I'll be watching closely. I'm sure a lot of people will too. So I invite you to do that if you're interested. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of things coming from OpenAI. And by the way, they have already stated that it's not going to be a search item. There's a lot of speculation there about OpenAI launching a search product. They have already said as of this weekend that it's not going to be a search product. But we'll see. We'll see what they say on Monday. So lots of more tools and interesting things to come. But definitely, don't think that you're going to have a robot in your home anytime soon. That's still going to be a little ways off. All right, we are just knocking out these stories. So the fifth story that I had covered from this week was around some content creators taking steps to protect their work from generative AI companies and from the scraping or usage by generative AI companies. So this kind of speaks back to the previous topic around intellectual property and what the steps those creators can take to protect their rights. So in this particular article, the discussion was specifically about graphic elements. and some of the items that they can do to help protect their own items, the digital artists. And they had focused on this poison, what they're calling a poison pixel effect, that they can put into their files in order to do two things, really. One, to directly attribute themselves to the work. So if that pixel is ever found in future works, they can say, hey, that's absolutely my work. Or two, they were talking about how some of these modifications can also throw off the metadata within the image file. And that way the image itself becomes useless or less useful to the generative AI companies, because those companies rely on the metadata as part of their indexing and part of their training cycles. So if you're giving wrong index data, then it makes that image, if you're giving wrong metadata, it makes that image a lot harder to use, or really not as effective to use. So I think that they are taking some fairly reasonable steps to protect themselves. I certainly would never want to discourage a content creator from wanting to protect their work and wanting to, make sure that their work is properly attributed to them. So I think that these are some positive steps that they are taking. I think that it's going to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game for the near future, where the generative AI companies will probably find ways around this. You could probably just start generating your own metadata for images, or scanning the images themselves for any extra pixels or anything that just kind of doesn't look right. So it's going to be a little bit of back and forth on how the generative AI companies, react to this. But I think that it's a very positive step that the content creators are taking in order to protect themselves, and really just trying to make sure that they're getting the proper credit for when their work is used. So, good on them for doing that, and we'll see where the final approaches or the final implementations of this back and forth ends up in the coming years. And finally, one of the, even though we've talked a lot about AI, one of the companies that we haven't really talked about is Google here. And Google was in a very interesting article that was discussing their efforts around getting more workers into the AI space, and into data science, into generative AI. And a lot of those workers they're targeting as needing visas because they're going to be bringing them in from overseas or whatnot. Now, when we talk about visas and all that, especially in the tech world, we're usually talking about the H-1B visa. And that's become a very tough process, a very competitive process. So Google is taking a little bit of a meta approach to how they're going to go about trying to fill their own AI roles. So what they're trying to do is they're focusing on something known as Schedule A. Now, I'm not an immigration expert, but I'm inviting you to do the research for yourself. But my read of the article is that they're focusing on Schedule A, which is a list that the US government maintains of jobs that are labeled as being in high demand and low supply in the US. So as an example, nurses have been, or most nursing positions have been on the Schedule A, because we know that there's a shortage of nurses in the US. We know that we need sometimes more nurses from outside our borders. Excuse me. As I was saying, we know that we need more nurses from outside because of the shortage here in the U.S. So that is a position that you would find on Schedule A. So Schedule A hasn't been revised in a while. The article states that it hasn't been revised since 2005. So Google is pushing for a revisit of Schedule A, because they say that we need more jobs added to Schedule A, and they're going to work towards having more data science jobs added there. And in theory, that should be able to fast track more workers coming in from outside for AI positions, and being able to work in the US with what I think is a lot more of an expedited visa process as opposed to the H-1B process, which is very limited and can take a while. So that is kind of the meta approach, if you will, that Google is taking, where they don't want to beg and plead for every single one H-1B visa. They want to put it more on a broader level to say, well, if they're a Gen AI worker or a data science worker, then that category as a whole expedites them to come work for them. So they're leading the pack on this, but obviously all other tech companies would benefit from that. Meta would benefit from it, and OpenAI would benefit, so on and so forth. So it's probably not going to be a fast process to get the government to look at Schedule A and develop some more and kind of move this forward. But it's good to see that Google is working at that level and kind of working for the benefit of the entire data science industry. So we'll be seeing how that develops and see if anything comes of it. Again, I don't expect it to be fast. I don't expect it to happen soon, but it's certainly a very interesting story to follow. So that covers the 6 stories that I had from the Data Science Minute that I publish every day. I invite you to keep a track on my YouTube, TikTok, X, and my LinkedIn, where I post all of those stories. So I also invite you to subscribe to my channel and please click on like on this video if you have found the stories interesting in some way. I post data science content both in short form and long form on all my social platforms. I invite you to follow me along, and if there's anything else I can help you with, you can reach me at dennis@datasciencewithdennis.com. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a great week. Again, keep an eye out for the OpenAI announcement on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific, and I'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.